is Wendy Sod, and welcome to my brand new Sodcast, where here I cover everything true crime. Today's case I'm going to be covering is Amy Mihaljevic, right here. Remember the name. This is an unsolved case. It's been unsolved for 33 years now. This case has always been on my mind, and I knew if I ever started a podcast that this would be my very first case that I covered. So let me tell you a little bit about Amy. She was a 10-year-old little girl, lived in Bay Village, Ohio, which is not too far from Cleveland, Ohio. She lived with her mom and her dad and her brother. Her mom was Margaret, dad was Mark, and her brother was Jason. She also had a dog named Jake. Dog lover. So was Amy. Amy was not only a dog lover, but she also loved horses. As a matter of fact, Amy would go take riding lessons at a nearby horse stable called Holly Hills, I do believe. Her and her friends took lessons there from time to time. And what else can I tell you about her? She was the most adorable little girl, had the cute little 80s hairdo, you know, just a precious, precious little girl. So Amy was last seen October 27th of 1989. Amy got up for school that morning and started to get ready, and her brother Jason left for school a little bit earlier than her. I think he left around 7 a.m. She left about 7:20. She jumped on her bike and headed to school just like she does every other day of the week. Nothing out of the ordinary. The only thing different about this day is that she told her mom that she was going to be home from school a little bit late. And the reason for that was she was trying out for the choir. And her mom was absolutely over the moon because that's what she did in school too. She sung in the choir. So this made her very happy. Amy took off to school. Like I said, 7:20, hopped on her bike. She arrives at the school, parked her bike outside in the bike rack where she parked it every other day, and went into school. The school started at 7:45. It was a normal day for Amy. Nothing out of the ordinary happened during school hours. The only different thing that happened at school that day was that she confessed to her friends that she was not actually going to audition for the choir, that she got a phone call the day before, and this man had called her and said that her mom got a promotion at work and that he needed help picking out a gift for her. So he wondered if maybe Amy, you know, knowing her mom so well, she could meet him somewhere to help him pick out this gift. So Amy agreed, loving her mom so much, she just wanted to make her mom happy. So Amy agrees to meet this man at the Bay Village Square, which is about 1 mile from the Bay Middle School. And so after school, Amy blew off the audition, and her and a few of her friends left their bikes at the school, and they walked to this Bay Village shopping center, which was like a strip mall type thing. Had different stores like, you know, Baskin Robbins and, you know, just little stores. It's a place where a lot of the kids hung out after school. So Amy gets there, and, you know, they're just doing their normal thing, and Amy is standing over there by a light pole, kind of just hanging out, waiting for this guy to arrive. And Amy was seen standing there from about 2:15 p.m. until 3:20 p.m. And in that time, 2 witnesses had seen an older gentleman approach Amy, and, you know, they had like a short conversation, and, you know, nothing threw up red flags at that time. He looked like a normal guy, you know, older guy, maybe, you know, could have been her dad for all they knew. So nothing, you know, threw up any red flags yet. After 3:20, they see Amy, these witnesses had seen Amy walking towards the parking lot with this gentleman, and that was the last time that Amy was seen. Now, Amy left for school that day wearing a light green jumpsuit, a white windbreaker, her black riding boots that she wore to the stables. She had little turquoise horse earrings that were her absolute favorite. She was carrying, I believe, a black backpack, and then inside that backpack was a notebook, like a very, how do I want to say it, noticeable, recognizable notebook from her dad's office that had a gold latch on top of it. I'm going to show you a picture of it here. And that's what she left with. Amy's brother got home from school that day, and he comes in, and she usually beats him home because she gets out of school at 2:05, I believe, and then he gets out of school at 3:05. So she usually gets home a little bit before him. And Amy and Jason were what were called Latchkey Kids, which, you know, back in the 80s was no big deal. If you're not familiar with what that term means, it means kids that would come home from school, and then there was a gap in time from when they got home from school to when the parents got home. So they might be alone for an hour or two before the parents got home, which was not even scary back then to any of us. It was a normal thing. So Jason gets home from school right around 3:10. He notices Amy is not there. So he calls his mom at work, Margaret, who works at the Trading Times magazine, and says, you know, Mom, Amy's not home yet. Margaret says, Jason, don't worry about it. You know, was going to audition for the choir today, so she's going to be a little bit late. So he didn't think anything about it. No red flags are still going up anywhere. They just assumed that she would be home in a little while. So time goes by. Margaret leaves work. She arrives home at 5:30ish and comes in. Jason says, Mom, Amy's still not home. So now Margaret begins to worry. You know, Amy, she said, was a good kid. She would have never let her know that she wasn't coming home. She was always in before the street lights were on. Very good kid. Not something that she would do. So Margaret hops in the car. She heads up to the middle school, and the first thing that Margaret sees is she sees Amy's bike still in the bike rack where she always parked it at school. And she went in, she talked to whoever was at the school. Nobody had seen Amy. So Margaret immediately really begins to panic because now she can't find her. So Margaret takes off. She goes straight to the Bay Village Police Department to report Amy missing. Margaret walked into the police department at 5:57 p.m. that night and reported Amy missing, and the police took this very serious, considering she was a 10-year-old little girl. This was not her MO. She didn't go to a friend's house without telling her mom. It just wasn't her. So the police immediately jumped into action in the way of talking to family, friends. No one, you know, family-wise had seen her. The few of the friends that they did talk to, though, brought out that Amy did lie to her mom about the audition and that there wasn't really one. And instead, she had plans to meet this man that she had received a phone call from the day prior to help him pick out a gift. And immediately they knew that this was a possible abduction and that they needed to get feet on the ground and, you know, get looking for her. So they immediately started a search. There was over 150 police officers involved. There were the Coast Guard involved, community, friends, family, everybody. This was a huge, huge search. So they start searching. They moved so fast on this that they had Amy's picture and her story already out on the 11 o'clock news that night. And, you know, they were getting flyers up, and, you know, everybody was just really pitching in to help find Amy and bring her home. So the search continues, obviously, through the night, through the next days, weeks go by. They're getting leads continuously, but they are not getting anything concrete that can be followed up on, and, anything that is worthwhile, really. So 106 days after the search began, on October 27, 1989, on February 8, 1990, Amy's body was found in Ashland County in Ruggles Township, Ohio, which is approximately at 50 to 60 miles from where Bay Village was. And the creepy thing about this is, and this is why I'm so attached to this story, I grew up in New London, Ohio, which might as well be Ruggles Township. I mean, back to back. It's a rural, New London has one stoplight, cornfields, there's wheat fields, there's cows everywhere, goats running around, beer drinkers everywhere. It's not a lot of excitement going on, really, unless you're at the Eagles on Saturday night, but it's not fun. So anyway, I was 14 years old when this story hit, and I remember just, the flood of media and everything going on, and it was, as a kid, being 14, it was exciting to me. So me and my friends, we all had to jump in the car and, drive out by where Amy's body was found, out on this country road, and just see what the excitement was. And of course, it was a couple days after. By that time, nothing, but we didn't know what in the hell we were doing. We were just stupid kids. So anyway, her body was found on, I think it was County Road 1181, something like that, in Ruggles Township. There was a jogger out that day, a lady by the name of Janet, that, usually jogged down that road, typically, every day. And she's jogging along, and out of the corner of her eye, she sees, something green laying in the field. And she, at first glance, thought was a rag or a blanket or something like that. And she said as she got up closer on it, she said she could tell immediately that it was a body. So she turns around, bolts to the first house she comes on, and calls the police. The police, obviously just boom, just fly in. They are on top of it, and not long after that, they did confirm that it was Amy Mihaljevic's body that they found. They did state that they put out a press release saying that they thought, that it appeared that she had been probably killed either that same day or very near after the time that she was abducted, due to, the decomposition of her body. She just was in a really bad state. We're not going to go into those gory details. It's just not necessary. But I will tell you some of the autopsy findings that they did find. And don't judge me. I got to look down at my paper because I always mess up these big words. So she had blunt force trauma to her head. She had several stab wounds in her neck. She had massive cervical soft tissue hemorrhage. And the oddest one is she had a post-mortem wound to her abdomen, her abdominal wall. Not real sure what that means, or that's just odd. So those were the findings from the autopsy report. They could not determine whether Amy had been essayed or not, due to the decomposition. And back then, they tried to collect as much evidence and, whatever they could off of her body at the time. But back then, DNA sucked. And it just wasn't where it is today. I mean, I can take a booger and, you can find my whole family history out of one booger. not back then. So, get the autopsy report. Amy was still wearing the light green jogging suit that she had left in on October 27th. She was still wearing one earring, the horse earring. One was missing, was not found in the location. Her boots were missing, her backpack was missing, and the notebook was missing. So these are still all items that are still out there that this creepy SOB is probably, God knows, I don't even want to know what he does with these things, but you know he still has them. So anyway, if, you know, somebody out there, someday this is going to get solved. Somebody's going to recognize one of these items, especially that little horse earring. Mark my words. Okay, to get back to the site where they found her, it was obvious that it was not the scene of the crime, that it was just a dump site. Approximately 300 yards away from her body, they also recovered a green curtain that what they're putting out is, they're calling it a homemade curtain. It looks like it was made from maybe an old bedspread. It had tabs along the top of it where it would hang on the rod. Very distinct looking curtain. And then they also found a green blanket, which I'm going to show you pictures here of. Just take a really good look at those, because those items also somebody recognizes. I'm going to give you one little strange fact about this. So originally when this blanket and the curtain were found, I read somewhere that Margaret made a statement that she recognized both of these items from being from their home, but she knew that Amy wouldn't leave the house for school that morning with, I think I'll take a curtain and a blanket to school with me today. I mean, you know, but yet in all of the press releases about this curtain, and these have been recent, they're still asking for people to identify that maybe they'll recognize these. So I'm a little confused at that. I'm not sure if she thought she just recognized them, and maybe, I don't know. Baffled. So anyway, let's get into some of the suspects, or really just the one suspect. Over the years, they have had, from different reports I've read, several suspects. They had interviewed the two witnesses that day from the strip mall that seen Amy standing at the light post, and they interviewed both of them and got pretty darn good descriptions of the man that Amy was talking to. The one witness stated that the man appeared to be 25 to 35 years old, wearing glasses, partial balding. And then the second witness said that he appeared to be, I believe, 35 to 45, partial balding, and she didn't remember if he had glasses on or not. So from those descriptions, they generated two different sketches, and I'm going to show you those here. And they are identical, just with and without the glasses. So over the years, then, you know, tips started coming in about this Lake Erie Science Center, which is, you know, it's these animal exhibits. I don't know, I've never been there, but school kids will go there, and I guess on school trips, or they could just visit, you know, randomly with family trips, whatever. And when they would go in, they would sign their name, sometimes put phone number and addresses. Now today, you wouldn't even think about doing that. Back then, we just weren't scared. I don't know. People just were not scared. We should have been, but we weren't. So, you know, there's a chance that, you know, with Amy visiting there, that she had put her name and address in there. Then another tip comes in from one of Amy's schoolmates, friends, that she too, around that same time that Amy went missing, received a phone call exactly the same from a man stating her mom got a promotion, blah, blah, blah. Same crappy, creepy story. And, you know, she just, I guess, didn't feel necessary to come forward at the time, or she just didn't think, I don't know. But, so that comes out. And it seemed to be a common thing that between Amy and this girl, that they had all visited the science center, and that possibly there was some kind of connection there, that maybe this is where this creeper is getting these girls' phone numbers and addresses, whatnot. It also appeared to the police that the creeper also probably knew Amy's mom personally, or knew of her, because, you know, Amy's mom actually was getting a promotion at work. So it had to be somebody close to the family, or knew of the family in some way, to know that kind of information. Okay, so tips are still rolling in. Let me get back a little bit to a timeline a little bit. So back up to 2006. In 2006, there was a press release done, and it came out that several other girls had received these phone calls. It wasn't just Amy, and it wasn't just this other girl in the very beginning. And they don't really disclose when these phone calls took place, if this was recent, or was it back then. We really don't know. But it was the same exact phone calls. And, you know, it ties back again to the Lake Erie Science Center, that these were kids that had all visited there. And, you know, they're just thinking there had to be some kind of connection. So let's skip up to 2016. They did a press release again on the blanket and the curtain. And they reanalyzed this forensically, and they did come up with some hairs found on both the blanket and the curtain. They, at that time, found hairs, animal hairs, that tied back conclusively to Jake, who was Amy's dog at the time. And they also found, I believe, 2 separate hairs. One later would be determined to be Amy's, and the other I don't think had a hair follicle, so I don't think that they could determine, you know, whose that was from. But that was 2016. Then in 2019, they are getting more and more tips, and they keep getting a specific name over and over again. And this name is of a man named Dean Runkle, who, if you remember, I said I was from New London, the area where her body was found. Dean Runkle was born and raised in New London. And he was always just an odd kind of loner type person, from what I hear. My connection to the Runkles is I'm a nurse, and I worked in a nursing home in New London for 8 to 9 years, and I won't mention her name, but I did take care of a patient there that was his sister. And, you know, me being a crime buff, it was killing me. I just would, every day I'd go in her room and I'd be, ooh, just ask her, just see what she has to say about it. So one day I go in the room and I'm, you know, Miss Runkle, I said, so I hear you have a brother. She says, yeah, I do. And without even me asking, she says, well, you know, he's, you know, a suspect in that little girl going missing and murdered. And I said, really? Who'd have thought? Didn't hear anything about that. So, you know, I pushed her a little farther, and I said, well, what do you think? And she said, well, I think he lives in Florida now. He ran from something. She said, he's odd enough. I wouldn't put it past him. That's coming from Sissy. Chew on that for a minute. So anyway, I am going to show you a picture right now of Mr. Dean Runkle. Here he is, and this is him next to the sketches. Pretty frickin' similar, if you ask me. Yeah, looks like yeah, he was probably sitting there when they drew the picture, if I had to guess. But, so, that's where his name came in. So, you know, they didn't have a reason to, they didn't have any evidence at that time. So they didn't have a reason to call Dean in or, you know, go question him. But Weirdo one day just decides, well, hey, I think I'll just go walk into the police station and, you know, just talk to them about this missing little girl. And so he comes on in, and, you know, they're questioning him, and he says, well, you know, have you found anything out about who killed her? And they start questioning him, and he just starts making some really odd statements. For one, you know, they asked him, well, what would you say if we told you that your DNA was found on the blanket that was found out by Amy's body? You know, would that be possible? And he says, well, sure, that could be possible, but, you know, if it's there, you guys planted it. And, you know, didn't just say, no, it's not possible. He had to go into weirdo mode. And then he's making just other weird statements about things, just not normal statements like you or I would answer. He did do a polygraph test that he failed miserably. He, I believe, gave DNA. And he also, a little bit about Dean. So he, as odd as he was, I guess he was smart. He was a biology teacher, I believe, and he used to work in Bay Village in an middle school. I think it was a middle school. And he was a middle school biology teacher. And he had this classroom, and he, like, turned it into a zoo, basically, and had all these animals and, you know, to draw kids in and shit. Just creepy. But, you know, years later, when people are being questioned, some of his students, there was just some really odd, creepy stuff going on that these students had to say about Mr. Runkle. That, you know, one little girl said, well, yeah, I wore a skirt to school one day, but it was a little bit shorter than we were allowed to wear. And Mr. Runkle came up to her and said, well, you know, that's not appropriate to be wearing at school, but I'm glad you wore it. Fucking weirdo. So, you know, just creepy stuff like that. There was another boy that reported that, although he got along well with Dean, his teacher, in school, that once he was out of school after Dean Runkle abruptly quit his job at that school and bolted, and went to Disneyland to work there for a little while, I do believe, but he continued to write this boy letters, and over time the boy said that they became sexual and just gross and creepy. And when the police question Dean about this, Dean just says, well, we were really close, but nothing inappropriate. Yeah, talking to a little kid about God knows what in those letters. I don't even want to know. Can't think about it. So, years go by. He abruptly quits school and goes down to Disneyland and does what he does. And then he comes back up to Ohio, and he begins teaching in Amherst, Ohio. I believe in a high school there. Didn't really read anything about him, you know, getting into any weird situations, relationships, any kind of reports from that. But I do know that Dean abruptly quit that job also, and to this day, Dean has still not been charged with Amy's murder. The police, the last report that they came out, press release, they did state that they're getting closer. He is the one and only suspect, and that, you know, they kind of alluded to the fact that it's coming. It's coming. But Creeper, after he abruptly quit his job in Amherst, he heads back down to Florida. I don't know, hopefully he'll get eaten by a gator or something, but I guess he lives in Key West, and he is homeless, and that was the last that, you know, I read about him. God only knows what he's doing down there. Keep your eyeballs open. Just stay away, keep your kids away, because this man is a creep, and hopefully one day they're going to get him, and he's going to sit in jail, and finally we can have justice for our precious little Amy. Sadly enough, Amy's mom passed away in 2011, I believe. I could be wrong on that. But Amy's mom took it very, very, very hard. Her and Margaret and Mark ended up getting divorced, and, you know, Amy's mom just did not recover. She just did not recover from this, and she became a very heavy drinker. It was so very sad, just completely heartbreaking. But she did pass away in 2011 without ever seeing justice for her daughter. Her dad, Mark, he did end up getting remarried. So the only two people living yet in the family are Mark, the father, and Jason, the brother. And they both, you know, continue to fight for justice for Amy and continue to push the police, and they'll never stop trying to solve this case until it's solved, until that creep is behind bars, not hurting anyone else. And we can only pray that over the last 33 years, this maniac has not done this before or after. Okay, guys, that concludes our case for tonight. Join me next time for another great case, and I will see you on the next episode. Peace out.